My name is Ayush Halawadi. You're watching Primetime. Let's have a look at the top stories. A glimmer of hope for the Korean peninsula and a historic meeting. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in agree to end the 7-decade war and pursue complete denuclearization. Reliance Industries' profit and revenue rise in Q4 but misses estimates. Gross refining margins come in at $11 for every barrel of crude, in line with estimates. Jio's discounts take a toll on revenue. Average revenue per user, ARPU, falls to 137.1 rupees from 154 in the third quarter. The Nifty and the Sensex post the biggest monthly gains since October. Private sector banks and RIL lead the rally. The rupee rebounds to 66.67 against the dollar. The Election Commission criticized 4 critical amendments made by the Modi government to political funding laws. That exclusive story is from the Quint. And the Congress releases its manifesto for the Karnataka elections, promises 1 crore jobs over the next 5 years in the state. Party President Rahul Gandhi calls the manifesto the Mann Ki Baat of the people. It's a historic day today for the world, not just for the Korean peninsula, but also, of course, across Asia and the rest of the world. Today marked the first time ever that a North Korea leader stepped in to South Korea, and that meeting promises peace in the region. We've got detailed coverage on the implications of this on Primetime in just a bit. We're also going to have an interesting chat. But first, let's get you up to speed with the important earnings news of the day. Reliance Industries' net profit rose for the 8th straight quarter, but missed analyst estimates in the March quarter. Somit Sankar joins us now with all the details. Somit?
So Reliance Industries reported a weak set of numbers in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018. All the numbers were below analyst estimates. So the gross refining margin, that is the key number for the refining business of Reliance Industries, came in at around $11 per barrel. Now this was below analyst estimates, and its premium to the Singapore gross refining margin, that is the Asian benchmark, also contracted in the fourth quarter. However, the gross refining margins managed to remain in double digit for the 13th consecutive quarter for Reliance Industries. Now the petchem business, that shined yet again in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018, with revenues and EBIT rising close to 13% compared to the last quarter, mainly on the back of higher volume and ramping up of the new capacities that was seen in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018. Now the refining segment, which contributes to the major part of the revenue side, if you see that yet again remains subdued in the fourth quarter because of the EBIT from the refining segment fall for the third consecutive quarter, while the refinery throughput fell by around 10% to 16.7 million metric tons in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018. Now the retail segment, which contributes a very small portion to Reliance Industries on a consolidated basis, has surprised yet again. The revenue grew around 28%, while EBIT was higher by 95% compared to the last quarter for Reliance Industries retail segment.
All right, Sumit, I have a second question for you, and that's to do, of course, with Reliance Jio. Now, Reliance Jio reported a near flat profit growth in the March quarter, but for the second consecutive time, the ARPU continued to fall. Surely that's a disappointing sign.
Yes, but it was on the expected lines. Now, analysts were expecting the average revenue per user to be at around 140 rupees per user, but it came in at 137 rupees per user. Now, it has declined because in the start of the quarter, Reliance Jio had cut tariffs, and because of that, the ARPU had come down in this quarter. But the ARPU that the company has reported is still below what analysts were expecting. Analysts were expecting close to 140 rupees per user. However, if you see the subscriber base, the growth has been strong when it comes to the subscriber base. The total subscriber base for the March 2018 was close to 18.66 crore subscribers. That means they have added close to 26 crore subscribers in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018, and in the month of March they have added close to 95 lakh subscribers. Now, the data consumption, which is a key theme for the telecom players as of now, has increased for Reliance Jio. It stood at around 9.7 GB per user in the fourth quarter of financial year 2018 versus 9.6 GB per user in the last quarter. While the churn ratio, which means the subscriber attrition, it is the lowest for Reliance Jio, and it came down to 0.25% per month versus 1.4% per month reported in the last quarter of financial year 2018. Lastly, the debt net debt of Reliance Jio was close to 57,000 crore rupees, which means it increased by 5,000 crore rupees compared to the last quarter of FY18.
Right, Sumit, thanks so much for that report. Now, India's largest automaker, Maruti Suzuki, posted its fourth quarter earnings today. Profit rose for the 15th straight quarter, but missed estimates while margins rose marginally. Yatin Motha sums up the top highlights from Maruti Suzuki's fourth quarter performance.
Well, Maruti Suzuki came out with a slightly muted set of fourth quarter earnings. Of course, that was because of weak operating performance. If you look at the numbers, of course, the increase tax rate impacted the overall net profit, and that probably caused a dent in the overall profitability. Profit growth was 10% versus the EBITDA growth, which was close to 18% for Maruti Suzuki. Also, the yen appreciation, higher finance costs impacted the overall profitability. Because of the yen appreciation, we saw some bit of impact coming in on the royalty payouts, because of which margins could have been impacted in the fourth quarter. Also, if you look at the key other highlights, the realizations growth was nearly 4% on a year-on-year basis. That was because of a price hike that the company did, and overall the environment on the pricing front remained healthy for the company. If you look at the other expenses, staff costs, ad cost, and ad and promotional expenses in the first quarter on the back of new launches ate into the overall profitability, and that is the reason why the margins came in at 14.2% versus a level of 14% on a year-on-year basis. The market expectations for margin was 15.6%, so a disappointment coming in really on that front because of the factors mentioned here. And of course, the management said that the uncertainty on the foreign exchange in the future could be something that could be impacting the overall profitability, and these are the reasons why probably the stock remained under pressure for the trade.
Now, Maruti Suzuki chairman R.C. Bhargava says the new royalty scheme between Maruti and Suzuki will gradually bring down the royalty outgo for India's largest car maker. Speaking to Bloomberg Quint's Bhanvi Arora, Bhargava also says that the Gujarat plant will be completely operational by the year 2020 and will have a capacity of 750,000 cars a year.
This quarter, I think, came to about 5.6% or something. But for the year as a whole, royalty payments came down from 5.8% of sales to 5.4% of sales.
And how do you see the royalty outgo in FY19, given that you submitted a proposal to your parent company for better royalty terms?
Suzuki has approved a new royalty formula. The agreements for that have all been signed after board approval by Suzuki. And the result of that agreement is that as we go along, the royalty payments should normally come down. The only thing which can temporarily have an impact is if the yen strengthens substantially. But subject to that, there should be a continuous decline in the royalty percentage as we go along.
Coming to the Gujarat plant, how will production be ramped up in FY19?
The first line of Gujarat is running at full capacity now. The second line will be commissioned early in 2019, and work on the third line has started, and that will be in production around April 20. So at that stage, when that line comes in, the installed capacity in Gujarat will be 750,000 cars a year.
All right, in breaking news, Interglobe Aviation President Aditya Ghosh has resigned. The company has named Rahul Bhatia as interim CEO. That stock that's on your screens, remember, was down nearly 6% in trade today. All right, let's move on to the biggest story, no matter where you are in the world right now. The North Korean peninsula is heading towards a lasting peace after a historic meeting between Kim Jong-un of North Korea and Moon Jae-in of the South. After a handshake that set the tone for positive talks, the two leaders ended their day with a commitment to denuclearization and to end decades of hostilities. Have a look. Now, Bloomberg's Stephen Engel has been covering this historic meet between the two Korean leaders. He files this special ground report from the very locality where this particular meet actually was hosted.
It's been an historic day on the Korean peninsula as the two leaders, Kim Jong-un of North Korea and Moon Jae-in of South Korea, held their summit. They shook hands, they even held hands and gave each other a bear hug, ushering in what they claim will be a new era of openness and peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. They say they will strive to end the hostilities, to end the Korean War that ended in an armistice 65 years ago. They aim to have some sort of peace deal by the end of this year. And perhaps even more importantly, they both say they are aiming for complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula at some point. And that would be surely good news to the ears of Donald Trump and the United States. The two leaders were mostly all smiles all day, pledging to meet much more often as well. Kim, in his first remarks really to the Western media, he said that we are agreeing to share a firm determination to open up a new era in which all Korean people enjoy prosperity and happiness on a peaceful land without war. Still, there will be some who share some pessimism because the North Koreans have made many promises before and broken them. Stephen Engel, Bloomberg News, at the southern end of the demilitarized zone on the Korean peninsula.
All right, now just to take the story further, John Nilsson Wright, Senior Lecturer in Modern Japanese Studies, Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, University of Cambridge, and a Senior Fellow for Northeast Asia, Asia Pacific Program at the Chatham House, joins us now. John, thanks so much for joining us. Now, it's a historic day, especially when the two leaders from North and South Korea talk about complete denuclearization and a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. But there were no clear details or timelines set for the same. Would you still say that this could be dubbed a significant meeting?
Oh, it's undoubtedly a very significant meeting. The symbolism alone, the first time that a North Korean leader has set foot on South Korean soil, can't be underestimated. And also the image of two very confident men with a clear liking for one another. I think that was unmistakable. Kim Jong-un himself, of course, showing some courage in, if you like, entering into what is at least nominal enemy territory. And at the same time, the two leaders going out of their way, I think, to demonstrate in a very tangible way that today is all about what the Koreas can do to improve peace on the Korean peninsula. This, if you like, those images of the two men sitting opposite one another in the open air, talking animatedly, is a reminder that in the past, the Korean peninsula's fate has been decided by external actors. Today is an opportunity to say North Koreans and South Koreans together reclaim control over their destiny. The reality, of course, is more complex. Beyond the symbolism, it is those other powers like the US and China that will have a critical role in debating the practicalities of denuclearization. But today is a very important first step in the direction of improving conditions between the two Koreas.
John, you mentioned the US and China, and that brings me to my next question. Will this meeting set the tone for the critical summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, especially considering how unpredictable both these leaders have proven to be in the past, and also considering how the North has reneged on its promises in the past as well? This time around, though, President Trump seems to be pretty certain that the Korean War is ending, especially based on his tweets.
Well, I mean, I think you're right to point out the past record of North Korea in breaching past agreements. It was very significant that President Moon mentioned the importance of denuclearization. Kim Jong-un did not use the D word, if you like. He didn't refer to it in his statement together alongside his South Korean counterpart, but he did make a commitment to try to honor past pledges. And by that, I presume that he's making a reference to the 1991 non-aggression treaty between North and South Korea, which is referenced in the Panmunjom Declaration that was issued today. And therefore, implicitly, he's making a further commitment to that denuclearization agenda. Beyond that, of course, the joint declaration has very practical steps, including the establishment of more humanitarian assistance, the efforts to put in place regular meetings between military officials, political officials, representatives of civil society, efforts to establish or re-establish close trade links with the North Koreans through the establishment of rail and road networks, a commitment to establish a zone of peace in the West Sea, and of course a commitment to a follow-up meeting sometime in August of this year between President Moon and his North Korean counterpart in Pyongyang. So what I think this declaration is an attempt to do is to create momentum towards a peace treaty and to also tie the Americans into any subsequent agreement so that the military option becomes almost impossible. That's why there's been a reference, I think, to the attempt to have some sort of trilateral or maybe quadrilateral structure involving the two Koreas alongside the United States and possibly China to talk about a peace treaty.
John, you mentioned the quadrilateral sort of structure, and that brings me to my next question. With the third and fourth players that you were talking about, the move to end the Korean War formally would face some sort of hurdles. For instance, China's likely demand for the withdrawal of US troops from South Korea as part of a peace treaty. Isn't that going to be a problem?
Well, in the past, it's of course the North Koreans that have made that demand. And they seem to have backed away from that position, at least judging from the statements of the South Korean president just a few days ago. The Chinese, I think at the moment, feel somewhat marginalized. They're not actively involved in these bilateral discussions. They will, of course, be worried that any move towards peace that might open the door to either unification or perhaps a confederal structure could also open the door to the presence of American forces much closer to China. So you're absolutely right. Dealing with the presence of US forces in the region matters to the Chinese. The interesting question is how China will go beyond being, if you like, an honest broker, trying to effect closer cooperation and dialogue between all the interested parties, to one that actually is involved in the mechanics of a peace treaty. And that will depend on the precise details that the different parties begin to propose in the next few weeks and months.
John, really appreciate you joining us on Bloomberg Quint. Thanks so much for speaking to us from Paris. Now, there's more on the bilateral front for India. Prime Minister Modi is in Wuhan to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. Here's an update on day one of the informal summit between the two leaders.
मुझे खुशी है कि ये इनफॉर्मल समिट ये हमारी एक रेगुलर व्यवस्था विकसित हो और मुझे खुशी होगी 2019 में ऐसे ही एक इनफॉर्मल समिट भारत की धरती पर हम लोगों को करने का अवसर मिले।
Now, in other news, SR Steel's Committee of Creditors met today and the lenders decided not to challenge NCLT's order. Remember, the NCLT had asked SR Steel to reconsider the resolution plan submitted by New Metal and ArcelorMittal. Vishwanath Nair sums up the takeaways from the lenders' meet in this report.
The Committee of Creditors for SR Steel, which met earlier today, has decided that it will not challenge the NCLT decision that was passed last week, a decision wherein the NCLT had directed the lenders to SR Steel to reconsider bids submitted by New Metal as well as ArcelorMittal. This order was passed because the NCLT felt that the lenders of the Committee of Creditors did not follow due process while determining the eligibility of both these bidders. They just depended on the resolution professionals' recommendations rather than going through the bids themselves. Now, Earlier today, when the lenders met, they decided that they will also consider both these bids, the eligibility of both these bids on an individual basis, on individual merit. They will give separate hearings to both the bidders, allow them to explain how they can rectify some of the issues under Section 29A, which were raised by the resolution professional and a forensic audit that was done by Kroll. Once the bidders have clarified to the lenders how exactly they are going to cure these Section 29A issues, then the lenders would be able to take a better, more informed call on which bidder needs to win this entire round of bidding. The lenders also said that whatever they decide in the future course of these meetings will be subject to what happens at the NCLAT. Remember that New Metal has approached the appellate tribunal to try and get ArcelorMittal's eligibility disqualified, essentially saying that ArcelorMittal is not eligible to bid for Essar Steel. The NCLAT on its part has agreed to hear New Metal's plea. In fact, it has actually issued notices to the Committee of Creditors, the resolution professional, as well as ArcelorMittal, and the next hearing is scheduled for May 17th. Depending on what happens at the NCLAT, these decisions will, the decisions by the Committee of Creditors will change. During the meeting, the Committee of Creditors also took note of a letter that was submitted by New Metal on Thursday. This letter primarily states, where New Metal primarily states that it will match or better the ArcelorMittal offer that has been placed in front of the Committee of Creditors. But the only condition here is that the lenders have to disqualify ArcelorMittal's bid. This is the kind of request that New Metal has made on its letter. The lenders took note of this letter. Of course, they did not take any decisions because all of that will depend on what happens in these individual hearings.
Now, Indian markets rose to their highest levels in over 2 months thanks to gains in private sector banks and index heavyweight Reliance, which rose to record levels ahead of its earnings. Both the Sensex and the Nifty gained nearly 0.7%. In fact, in April, both the benchmarks posted their best monthly gains since October. Agam Vakil wraps up the week's market action for you.
Well, a week which was influenced by earnings this time. We had the Nifty as well as the Sensex eventually move up and advance by as much as well over 1%. In fact, Sensex moving up by as much as 1.6%. And the reason behind the gains on the indices were Yes Bank moving up 13% on the back of good earnings coming in, and Mahindra, of course, catching up with some of its peers, also advancing by as much as 8%. On the losing end, however, we did see a lot of weakness in Hindalco on the back of aluminium prices, and Wipro, of course, this is largely on account of the fact that we saw weak earnings come through, especially on the back of subdued outlook as well. But in the broader markets, in terms of gainers, we had Indiabulls Ventures and ICICI Prudential advance. ICICI Prudential moving up by as much as 16% once again on very good earnings. And on the losing end, PC Jeweler stands out in trade, down by as much as 40%. Well, the management of the company has said that there's no specific reason and they are still investigating the reason behind this drastic fall. But Reliance Naval, of course, corrected on account of weak earnings. Will we see a recovery in some of these stocks in the coming week, and what role will the earnings play in the markets? Well, we just have to wait and watch.
All right, in other news, the Finance Ministry said that the government collected an average monthly goods and services tax of 89,885 crore rupees in the August to March period. Payaswini Upadhyay joins us now. Payaswini, what do you have for us with the GST scorecard? Okay,
so let's look at this 7.19 lakh crore number that the government has put out, and how does the breakup look like? The 2017-18 CGST collection is 1.19 lakh crore. The IGST collection is 3.66. SGST, which is the state GST, is 1.72, and this is the compensation cess. Now, the IGST settlement is essentially, integrated goods and services tax settlement against your GST liability. You can use your IGST credit either to fulfill your state GST liability or central GST liability. That settlement is a number of 1.19 lakh crore. That gets added to the state GST, and that number comes to 2.91. And then you add for the CGST component 1.19, whatever is left of the IGST and the compensation cess after giving to the states. So in terms of the states' receipts of GST, the final number has come to 3.32 lakh crore, and in terms of the centre's receipt of GST in the kitty is 3.86 lakhs crore. That is really the breakup of 7.1 lakh crore number. It will be interesting to now look at the 2018-19 budgeted estimates and the revised estimates that the finance minister put out. The 2017-18 revised estimate for CGST is 2.21 lakh crore, and the budgeted estimate is 6.03 lakh crore. The government is expecting a 173% increase in the CGST collections in this financial year. In terms of the compensation cess, the government is expecting a 47% increase. This is the number that I'm talking about. We don't have the state GST figures. The IGST figure, the government is estimating, decline in collection by 69%. This is that number, probably due to state compensations. This is what we could broadly make of the numbers that we have. Badri Narayanan, partner at Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan, now joins us to give us better insights into how we should look at this 7.19 crore number. And, in terms of the budgeted estimates, how is the year looking ahead? Badri?
Sure. Thank you for that, Payaswini. Very interesting numbers have come out today, and it's interesting to see how to work this one out. First and foremost, as you know, there was a difference between the CGST collection, which is at 1.19 lakh crores, as against 1.72 lakh crores for the SGST collection. So, since the rate of tax for both CGST and SGST is the same, you would have expected the same kind of numbers. The numbers are different because there's been a lot of transitional credit which has been taken from the earlier service tax and excise regime for the purpose of payment of CGST taxes, which is why the figure is coming at 1.19 lakh crores as against a higher number at this point of time. So I think one of the aspects which will probably be seen in the next year's budget estimates and also collections would be the fact that this transition credit will not be available next year. So the number of 1.19 lakh crores is what has come out, and 1.72 is the amount which the states have collected as such from transactions which are local in nature. Like you explained,
sure,
the interesting number to come out. Yeah.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
The interesting number to come out is the IGST numbers. The IGST numbers are interesting because the numbers which we can see in IGST is about 3.66 lakhs crores, which if you see is really a collection of equal amount of taxes of the center and the state. So if you idly break it up, it should be 1.8 lakh crores for the center and for the state. But if you look at the actual amount that the states have got, which is the 2.91 lakh crores, which includes both the CGST and the SGST and the IGST component, the center has only provided 1.19 lakh crores to the state as against 1.83. So there's a gap of about 0.6 lakhs crore, which is contained in the center's collections, which have not devolved to the state. So that's an interesting aspect. That number will ultimately come to the states once the allocations between the state and the center happen over a period of time, and that will be dependent on when the transactions end with the final consumer having purchased goods which were going through the system. So as the goods travel through the supply chain and over the few next months complete the chain, these numbers will keep getting adjusted against the state taxes. So those are interesting numbers to see, the CGST and SGST and IGST. Payaswini, you had a question which I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
Well, I'll have to let that pass. Badri, we have some breaking news coming in, Ayush.
Absolutely. Payaswini, thanks so much for this particular update. Now, in news just coming in, Interglobe Aviation President Aditya Ghosh has resigned. The company has named Rahul Bhatia, as we mentioned earlier, as interim CEO. That stock, remember, was down 6% in trade today. Now, Ghosh will step down as president from July 31st and as director with effect from April 26. Menika Doshi joins in for more. Menika, what more can you share on this breaking news development?
We don't have much more detail at this point in time, Ayush, except for what you have already shared with viewers and the fact that the stock seemed to have anticipated this earlier today. It was down 6%, whereas, stocks of comparable companies such as SpiceJet, etc., were down 1 or 2%, so it was not a sectoral impact. I think what we understand is that Aditya Ghosh is leaving for personal reasons. That he's leaving so quickly is surprising. He will be done, as you pointed out, as president of the company effective July 31st, and he will also leave and will be stepping down as director even earlier than that. April 26th, that's yesterday, is effectively when he stepped down as director, and July 31st he'll give up his executive responsibilities altogether. Now, charge goes back to Rahul Bhatia, the co-founder of the airline. He will take on the mantle of interim chief executive officer. I understand that the obvious use of the word interim suggests that they will look for new leadership from here on, and I'm sure that this will not be seen as investors as an easy transition for anybody to make, which is not to suggest that Rahul Bhatia does not understand how this airline runs. He is the founder of it, but Aditya Ghosh has provided some very marvelous leadership to this airline over the last several years, and his sudden departure will come as a surprise to investors. Ayush?
Right, Menika. We also have Mayur Malik, research analyst, institutional equity at Anand Rathi, joining us on the phone line. Mayur, thanks so much for speaking to us. Menika was just breaking down the details for us. Would you say that this is a development that really explains today's big fall in the stock price?
Yeah, I think that's correct. It's not Anand Rathi, it's India Nivesh Securities. And coming to the news, yes, I think big negative. I think Aditya Ghosh has been one of the key guys to really, see the development in Indigo. And I think he's leaving the post will definitely have a negative impact on the performance and the stock price.
Absolutely, and Menika, also, you were talking about some of the reasons a little earlier. We're also going to have a few more guests joining in and a few more experts joining in as well. Menika, if you could also share any more details. I know this is an ongoing story and it's just broken. If you could share a few more details with us.
No, well, I think this is what we have, Ayush, and I think the question to put to Mayur is really whether, Rahul Bhatia taking over as interim chief executive officer of the company will assuage some concerns on this front, given that he's co-founder of the company. Mayur, how do you read the fact that, the airline for at least the time being will be in the charges in the hands of Rahul, and thereafter I would imagine they will appoint new leadership as and when the search of this concludes successfully?
Honestly, if you ask me, I think at a time when the company decided to change strategy, from being a one fleet to multi-fleet, from really having an operational lease to really going to owning some assets, I think a guy as critical as Aditya Ghosh to really see the turnaround in the new strategy would have really played a key role. The fact that he'll be missing, and even if, Rahul picks up, and the fact that they are only mentioning him as an interim CEO clearly means that they're looking for somebody. I would really say that it's a big challenge. Especially in this scenario where, you are seeing crude really going up at 73 plus 74, the rupee depreciating. And so I think it's going to be a big challenge. And for the time being, with the kind of rally that we've seen in the stock, I would definitely believe it's a big negative on the stock price.
So you expect, Mayur, that the stock price will further react on Monday to this news, despite the fact that it dropped almost 6% today. We could see, further downside to the stock as the market and investors absorb this information and also try and understand whether this next leadership of Indigo Airlines will be as capable as Aditya Ghosh has been.
Yeah, so this industry has not been a very sweet industry. You really needed very capable guys to run it through, and the fact that Indigo made profits for the last 8 years, I think was all a lot of credit goes to the executives who are really handling the show. I would definitely believe that with crude up, there are fundamental reasons also which really are negative for the industry as such, and the fact that Indigo really has lost a key guy will definitely play a big role on the stock price.
Two follow-up questions here. First, that not only has this come out of the left field, if I may call it that, because, Aditya Ghosh has resigned as a director of the company as of yesterday, and he will be giving up executive responsibility in just a couple of months from now, which is July 31st. So this has come all of a sudden. Does it to you, therefore, suggest that there is more than, meets the eye here?
See, honestly, I don't want to speculate on that. Unless you don't really know the details from the management, would be difficult to really take a call on that. All I really can say is a key guy moving out at a time when the industry or the company would really need him can dent, the future prospects of a company. You really need somebody as capable as him, and that would take some time, some judgment to really see whether Indigo holds on the leadership position the way it has done in the last 6-7 years.
Follow-up question is this then, that, is there anybody else within the executive leadership team at Indigo that you would repose confidence in? Currently, it is Rahul Bhatia, interim CEO. I'm sure that they will appoint a committee as well as an agency to look for a new leader. But is there anyone from within that you believe could become the next leader of this company? This is not a company that actually puts its leadership out there in the public in any dramatic fashion. So anyone that you may know of in your interactions with the company that might be able to hold the boat steady till new leadership comes on board?
No, not really. I don't think I can speculate on that.
Also,
right.
just to add to that, we also have PR Sanjay joining us on the phone line from Bloomberg News. PR Sanjay, my question to you is, this is a massive development coming out of the Indigo hangar. What are you picking up on this story?
Oh, this is a surprise announcement. Because there were some rumors, which is rumors mill going on since last year, but people actually discounted because this is most toughest time and most turbulent time for the country's largest airline by passengers carried and by fleet as well. Because this is, they have been facing a little bit troubles with the new aircraft, which is the A320, which is supposed to be expected to be the game changer. And of course, they had managed immediately after the IPO, they convinced their shareholders about the benefits of A320 Neos, but they didn't expect this kind of a technical delays and engine problems, which has actually had impacted its little bit credibility as well.
His exit, Aditya Ghosh's exit, has to do with these recent problems that the airline has faced, especially the engine-related problems?
So there is no clear-cut answers for that, because the statement simply says that the regulatory filing is not clear about all the stuff. But when we actually scan through the affairs of airlines at this point of time, the major problems faced by this airline is, it's not about market share, it's not about profitability. It's been consistently making profits. It's been consistently doing great in on-time performance in every single parameter. But what they missed actually is, for any airline, if there's a new machine which is being introduced, be it 737 or be it the original A320s or classic or 787s, for that what happened for Air India, they had faced turbulent time. They had faced problems with this new machine and its engine.
You're suggesting then in some ways that there is a connection between the problem that they've had with regards to the grounded aircraft and the engine-related trouble and Aditya Ghosh's departure. We're also joined by our markets editor, Neeraj Shah, who joins us on the line. And Neeraj, Mayur was just talking to us a short while ago on how the stock is going to take this rather negatively on Monday, even though we saw a 6% fall today. Do you want to jump in with some thoughts on this development?
No, Minka, I actually heard the whole discussion, almost everything encapsulated. Just keep in mind that the stock was almost trading at new highs. Despite the troubles that it has had, the passenger traffic growth and the market share hasn't really dipped too much. Those numbers have stayed rock steady for Indigo. So the investor community has been rather sanguine in rewarding the stock. That it has come out of the blue, and today's 5% move suggests that it was very few people who probably knew about this. You would attribute this fall to this move, but hardly anybody in the market had a whiff about it. So the real reaction, if you will, could likely be seen on Monday and thereabouts. But I did hear you say, Menka, that he's still going to be continuing in the executive role for the next couple of months. I would presume that is to ensure a smoother transition.
Till July 31st. And anyways, I think the interim charge is in Rahul's hands, who is the co-founder of the airline. So he's not unfamiliar with the operations. But as Mayur was pointing out, Aditya Ghosh has really been quite marvelous for this company's performance in the last several years, except for these last few months when they've had engine trouble.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, Menka, who they eventually manage to get in as the new CEO. But as history shown us in the past with some of the. I think Sanjay wants to come in, or maybe with a comment as well.
No, absolutely,
Ayush?
Neeraj, we'll have to leave it at that. We wanted to cover this on the show. It was the top story. Aditya Ghosh steps down at Interglobe Aviation as president. We will get you more. You can always log on to bloombergquinn.com. But on this show, that's about all the time that we have. We will be coming back with a debate. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned.